Welcome to the Awaken on Purpose podcast, where each week I share insight, inspiration, and advice for quantum leaping into new levels of expansion in your purpose and mission as a visionary leader and wayshower. You'll also hear from other new paradigm leaders who share their inspirational stories and wisdom. If you're passionate about embodying your highest destiny and leading others through this great awakening into the next golden age, this show is for you. Hey everyone, I'm excited to welcome as a guest to the show today, Heidi Gruss. She is a licensed psychotherapist, transformation strategist, and entrepreneur, and I can't wait to have this conversation. Welcome, Heidi.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yeah, so I've got a clinical practice here in Southeastern Connecticut, and really excited to have this conversation with you.
Yeah, likewise. I'd love to just kind of kick things off. If you could share with us more about the clients that you serve, like, is there a certain type of client that you serve, and what inspired you to actually travel this path?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So I am a certified trauma therapist. That is sort of how I, entered the field and just continued on that path for the last 20 years. And I think, through listening to various stories and growing an appreciation for, as a licensed psychotherapist, you're always, dealing with diagnostic criteria and trying to, manage symptoms. But then there are plenty of people who, come upon life circumstances, adversities, challenges, right? We all know about those after the last couple of years, where it just puts you out of alignment with who you are. You may not be qualifying for an actual mental health diagnosis, but that doesn't minimize the hardship that you're going through. And so, really coming into it, an appreciation for another population of people that needs help, but therapy isn't the right place for them. It helped me grow into a coaching arena as well. And so I started making different types of wellness, programs and things, and refined the transformation methodology over a few years of working with coaching clients, realizing that, sometimes in life, we just come upon a chapter where we've become complacent or stagnant. We've become uninspired. And sometimes there are destructive patterns, emotional blocks that we have to identify so that we don't continue to sabotage future opportunities for success. And so that's what the transformation methodology program is all about.
I love that. I love how you got into coaching and blend, all of the skills that you've honed along with the passion that you have for your work. I love that so much. Especially the last couple of years, so many people have been, there are always people having an awakening, but even more so over the last couple of years, with everyone's lifestyles essentially being turned upside down, I think it's prompted a lot of people to question what's really important to them and to really look at how aligned they are, not just in their careers or their businesses, but in their lifestyles as well.
You're absolutely right. And in the last couple of years, going through the pandemic, we saw, a lot of things sift to the top. Things that were kind of glaring problems that we tried to avoid dealing with or pretend really weren't big problems. Well, they were staring us right in the face. In the same way that we also, some people use this time to realign with things that were most important to them. Families gathering around the dinner table on a regular basis, when previously, their schedules were so hectic and chaotic that they were often, just eating on the fly, or not having that sort of regular time to reconnect and share a meal together. So there's both ends of the spectrum for sure.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on, well, actually, we were chatting a little bit before we hit record, and we were talking a little bit about burnout. I'd love to hear your thoughts around that.
I think everyone knows what it feels like to be burned out. It's you're tired, you're falling asleep before your head hits the pillow. But there's also this piece around, you're not passionate anymore. You're uninspired. The things that, used to really excite you now just feel like another task on the to-do list. And I think today we're seeing this more and more frequently because the pace of our lifestyle is just so fast. It's so fast. And, in the transformation methodology, it's every pillar, every principle that is facilitated, it redirects the client away from the external and back to the internal. Because, in this day and age, so many people are hyper aware of what's expected of them from other people in their life, from the different roles that they play, from what's expected from what they see on social media, right? And those become the standards by which they live. And oftentimes that completely redirects them away from their values, from their priorities, and from the things that they need, from a place of need to keep them as their best self. So you start compromising your own needs to fit in or to create a sense of belonging in places that they might not fit for you. So there's a lot of pressure. There.
Yeah, it's interesting you say need, right? Because there can, even within that, be taken in terms of like taking a deeper look into, well, where is the need coming from? What need are they motivated by? Because even when someone thinks that they need something for themselves, it could actually be a need that's still based upon what others want for them. So getting to a place where they're recognizing that as well, right? Because
absolutely. I mean, we talk about the roles, the identities that we've picked up along the way. The ones, like the caretaker, the pleaser, the fixer, the protector, the provider, the peacekeeper. I mean, there's so many.
Yeah.
And sometimes we assume these roles just based on our family dynamics or our peer group growing up, or just, maybe we're the team leader, in different activities or things like that. You find a role and it becomes comfortable. And then you recreate that role in other areas of your life. We pattern. We as human beings pattern. We're so good at it because we like predictability. Our brains, we can get into the science. Predictability creates safety for us. And so sometimes our patterns serve us in really positive ways. And other times we pattern behaviors that sabotage. But we do it because it's what we know, it's what we've always done, and it's what we see around us.
Right, which is actually goes against the grain of how we're wired as human beings. I say this often, that our mind is a faithful servant, but our soul actually has the blueprint for our lives. Our soul actually has all of the answers. So having that awareness and that willingness to step beyond, as you mentioned, what you already know, and leaning into you know, getting, instead of being scared of change or scared of the unknown, learning how to shift that mindset?
Well, I think, along the lines of the fast pace that we live,
Hmm.
um, we have to slow down in order to feel. So
Hmm.
I actually find, so we know we cannot think and feel at the same time, right? So often we try to figure things out. We try to navigate based
Hmm.
on thinking. I don't know, let me figure this out, right? Let me think
Yeah.
about it. Right? But when we really just get quiet and we allow ourselves to feel,
Yes.
free, our soul will guide us. The problem is
Hmm.
the majority of people don't slow down enough to feel, because the surface level feelings are the overwhelm, the anxiety, the fear, the things that feel threatening. It feels uncomfortable. But when we get quiet enough and we build that inner trust with ourselves, that I can feel the surface level feeling to get to the deeper feeling, I'm actually going to be very clear
Yeah.
on what needs to happen next. Right. And so I talk about, we have to step into the fear to feel the magic.
Yeah, true. So true. You have to allow yourself to embrace it. So many people try to suppress those feelings. Again, you know, societal programming around that, you know, vulnerability is viewed as a weakness, which isn't true either. And so admitting that we have a fear, right? And fear is just part of the human experience, no matter how self-aware you are, in my opinion.
For sure. I think there's also, though, along the lines of, how busy we are, so putting aside any type of traumas and really horrific life experiences, right? We like to compartmentalize. And so when challenging times come up, we all know the saying, when it rains, it pours, right? And there's truth to that. When one thing happens and we're overwhelmed and another thing happens in the midst of that, it's like, oh, we want to throw our hands up in the air because we feel like we can't do it all. And so naturally what happens for most people, and I coach people internationally, and so I've never had someone disagree with this, right? We treat our emotional trash can the same way we treat our kitchen garbage can, right?
Mhm.
So that kitchen trash can is typically the central garbage in the house, the one where when the bathroom and the bedroom garbage cans get too full, you bring it down and you pour it into the kitchen one, right?
Mhm.
So there's something, and again, international audience, right? There's something that we all do to that kitchen trash as it rises to the top before we take the bag out. Do you know what it is?
Hmm.
What do you do with your trash can? Because we all do it.
Well, my trash can stays in the same place. I empty it periodically when it gets full.
Yeah, but before you empty it, as it's rising up to the top, we stick our hand in and we compress
Yeah, we
that
push it
trash
down.
out.
Right.
Yeah,
We see how
push
much
it
we
down.
can fit in there before we
Yeah.
have to empty
And
it correctly.
And it's a fun moment, right? Where me and my client admit, yep, we both put our hand in that trash and we cram it down. And I even bring it over to the fridge sometimes and I'm like, all right, what needs to go, right? I'm gonna fit everything possible in this trash bag.
Yeah.
And then when we finally pull it out, it's overflowing, it smells, it's leaking. Well, we do the same thing with our emotional trash can. When one thing happens in life, we start dealing with a little bit of it, right? And then as life happens, and another challenging situation comes up, right? We have to just take a little bit at a time and we put the rest in the emotional trash can. Even with the best of intentions that I'm going to get around to it as soon as I take care of this initial stuff in front of me. Except when we're finally done dealing with what's in front of us, we're not looking for more problems. It's like, I just need to enjoy like peace of mind for a little bit, right? I'll get to this later, except life keeps going. And so we pattern that behavior. We keep compartmentalizing the overwhelm, the stress, the fear, the hurt feelings, the, all of it. And it also starts leaking in us. And that's our soul speaking to us that we're out of alignment.
Yeah.
It might be that we're just irritable. We're not sleeping well. We're not enjoying things that we used to enjoy. And we can either lean into that and give it a voice and some attention, or we can say,
Yeah.
it's just this, it's just that, right? But it's there. But the higher that emotional trash builds up, the more our body acts out, right? It's like, if you don't listen to the first couple of cues, it's going to up the ante. It's going to make sure. And then that's where you see people really struggling.
Yeah. Beyond, anytime we're feeling off, right? Anything other than content, that's an indicator that there's something that can be looked at there. I love what you brought up earlier about the importance of creating space, and it's so true. We have to create the space to allow ourselves to feel, and the society that many of us have been brought up in, right, doesn't condone that. There's a hustle mentality of, accomplish more by doing more, and you can actually accomplish just as much by, if not more, right, by taking the time back just to spend that time each day being. I know for me, I had a corporate career, all of that before I started my business, and meditation for me at the time in the earlier years of my path was, a huge gateway into that transformation, into bringing up that emotional trash that you referenced. I'd love to talk to you a little bit more about trauma, because when you're someone who has been on your growth path for a while, you're creating the space, you're maintaining the daily habits, and things still aren't moving in the direction that you want. In my experience as a coach and an intuitive and a mentor, and on my own journey, of course, that has been what I've experienced, is that it usually goes back to some type of trauma that is unhealed that someone has experienced.
It may.
Yeah.
It may also be a result of a limiting belief.
Yes.
That resistance, and the limiting belief may be independent of trauma, right? We can have a limiting belief regardless. But that is an opportunity. First, we have to recognize that the belief is just a story. That sort of just accepting that truth, takes some of the power out of the belief.
Oh, yeah, I thought you were going to say something else. Yeah, no, that's true. That's a great point. It could be a limiting belief as well. At what point does someone recognize when there is deeper exploration that needs to be done?
What do you mean by that?
Well, what can often happen, especially with someone who has a growth mindset, they can get into a place of almost like there's always something that has to be fixed before they get to their next destination. I guess what I'm really asking and being a little more clear here is how do they know when to shift gears?
Well, one of the things I'm always reinforcing to my clients is, if you're trying to figure it out, really you're just spinning, because we don't figure things out by thinking. We need to be actively applying, right? So sometimes we have to go out and we have to take the risk, and there's a spectrum of risk, right? So there's low risk to high risk. And so while we want to promote safety and security, we also have to normalize that, if I asked you to go and walk around with your shoes on the wrong feet for an entire week, it feels wrong the second you put your feet in the opposite shoe, right?
Yeah, it feels uncomfortable.
Yeah, I mean, completely awkward. You're clumsy. You're probably grabbing onto furniture. There's no ease and flow at all with the way you're walking. And you're probably walking at a much slower pace. But after doing it for 3 or 4 days, you will have found a rhythm. You will have found a groove. It would still feel uncomfortable though. And so part of this is normalizing the discomfort associated with any change. It doesn't mean that it's wrong. It just means that it's going against how things are programmed in your mind and in your body. We're used to the way what is familiar. We're used to how that feels. And so I think when people are on a growth path and they find themselves hitting different blocks, it's not a thinking or knowledge block. We all know. It's an emotional block where they're getting caught up in either the apprehension of the discomfort or the actual discomfort, right? And that is where, if we can lean into that, that is going to open the door to recognize, wow, there's a story right here that I've been retelling myself over and over and over again, not even realizing that I was keeping myself stuck. It's not intentional. It's not malicious. It's just automated.
We are obviously still living in very much in uncharted times. What would be your number one piece of advice for someone to most, effectively or let's say happily navigate these times?
So I think it's always bringing it back to, control the controllables, release the rest.
Yeah.
Own that you are the decision maker of your time, of your energy, of your attitude.
Yes.
And that's powerful when you really think about it. Like, you get to say no, you get to use your voice. You get to decide what's most important to you. You get to decide how you're going to respond to whatever circumstances in front of you, realizing that it's not, having a bad attitude or becoming, completely distraught about something. It doesn't make it go away. This past weekend, I was talking to someone and they were really apprehensive about a tough conversation they had to have. And I looked at them and I said, tough conversations are tough, but not having them doesn't make them any easier.
Yeah,
so
true.
Let's look at how can you approach this conversation the best way possible for the best intended outcome, and then let the rest go. Control the controllables, release the rest.
Yeah. You had mentioned something earlier in our conversation about how so many people can be in this space of, wanting to please others, right? Being really beyond pleasing others, just being concerned with other things externally to the point that it kind of dilutes or clouds, maybe the true essence of who they really are. The advice that you just shared is sage advice, yet some people can feel like that's easier said than done. I feel like it's worth mentioning that, in someone's quest for growth, some relationships, people, and external things in our lives may only be meant to be there for a season, and that, it might serve someone in the highest capacity to make the decision to let go of a relationship or even a job or making a change in their business.
And I think reframing that for my clients so that they see this as their choice.
Yes,
It's so
absolutely.
empowering, right? So you're not the victim of this circumstance. You're choosing to move on from the relationship, from the job, from the circumstance, right? And choosing it based off of what is best for you.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. In closing, what else are you feeling guided to bring forward?
Wow, what a huge question.
You can take a moment. It's fine. Yeah, I just love to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I think I believe in the work that I do, that there are sort of like you were just talking about, like a season where things can serve us for a season in our life. I also find that there are themes to the predicaments and to the problems that my clients face. There, weeks will come where it's like, I feel like I'm having the same conversation over and over and over again. And just in the last, I would say since like midweek last week, there has been this theme around feeling afraid to dream, feeling afraid and feeling selfish to ask for more. And, it's one of my clients, she was realizing, I'm 37 years old. I've done the single parent thing. I've proven I can get a job. I can pay all the bills. I can own my own home. I can do all these things. I've got a great job, but I'm still only 37. And I want to be able to do more just so I have the option. And, it's really interesting to me that sometimes we are afraid to move forward because we don't know what the other side of that is. And that was one of her apprehensions, but I don't know what more means or what it looks like, but I know that there's something else. And so just giving space to that, to allow yourself to even consider, geez, what would it be like to go and live in a different climate, if that's what you've been dreaming about, or to, live in a different type of space, or to go and do a completely different job, to reinvent yourself in a way that maybe your 8-year-old or 12-year-old self used to dream about. And now at 37, 47, 57, you are entertaining those ideas again, I think is the most fascinating and empowering thing you can do for yourself.
Yeah, it's aligned with who we are. We're powerful creators, and the answer to what's on the other side is what's bringing you joy, right? Because you're dreaming about things that light you up.
Well, and also when we're young children, we don't know that things might not be possible. We're not aware of limitations. We're not aware of circumstances that might impede our ability to achieve what it is we dream about. And so I find when I ask my clients to go back to that time, they're much more able to share things that they might admit now sound goofy or unrealistic, but yet there's something about that really does still exist deep down. And we have to pull that out of that emotional trash can. We may have to dig deep to find that, but it's there. We never lose those dreams.
Well, no, in fact, when we're younger, I mean, we shine more in the true essence of who we really are. It's, the limiting beliefs, the conditioning, trauma, anything else, that comes along the way dilutes that essentially. And thankfully, there are so many people on the planet that become aware of that and choose to get back to that, to the true essence of who they are. And I think that's amazing.
Yeah, me too.
What an awesome conversation.
Thank you. I enjoyed well. Yeah.
Yeah, it was great. Thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing your heart and for sharing the amazing work that you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was my pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Awaken on Purpose podcast. Please visit me and subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts or at awakenonpurpose.com so you never miss an episode. To learn more about how you can embody new levels of expansion in your purpose and mission as a visionary leader and way shower, visit me at jenniferspore.com.